going on, everybody? Today we're going to be building a vintage style mouse fishing lure with a leather tail, leather ears, and a metal lure lip. Now, the inspiration for this came from my last video that I uploaded, which was a podcast style video with me and the boys discussing the history of the rat fishing lure, and it started with a vintage mouse bait. Now, there is going to be a free pattern available on my website underneath of the do-it-yourself lures. I'll have that linked in the description below if you guys are wanting to build one of these for yourself. Now, literally the day I started filming this video, the weather went to crap, so my test tank and all the surrounding ponds are frozen, so I think I'm gonna have to break this video into two pieces because it's really important that you guys can see the swim on the bait whenever it's done. Because I'm going to be using 3 different style of lure lips, and I want you guys to be able to see how they act differently in the water. Therefore, I need non-frozen water in order to test them. So like I said, pattern will be in the description below if you're going to build one for yourself. Please tag me in whatever you build so I can see what you guys did with the pattern. And with that said, let's get to this build. For this vintage mouse build, we're going to be using these poplar squares. I picked these guys up at Lowe's. They are back kind of by the trim or the dowel rod section in this little bag. This was only $5 to get these 4 different pieces. Now I'm using 1-inch piece. That's the important part here. You can get other pieces that are longer than 12 inches if you wanted, but I figured this one being a 5-pack and the bait's only going to be about 3 inches long, this will do. And $5, hard to beat that. Now, I like using poplar because it's a pretty soft wood, yet it's sturdy enough for the line ties and things like that not to get ripped out of them. Our bait, the wooden portion of the bait, is going to be right at 3 inches in length. So what I'm going to do is mark just a little bit past 3 inches. That way, after we do some sanding, I'll still have plenty of room for my pattern to fit on there. Now, I'm going to make several of these, so I'm gonna give something to the boys, of course, and we're going to be doing a couple different painting videos with it. So I'm gonna run over to the saw real quick and chop probably 2 of these up, all into 3 inches in length. Okay, got our 3-inch vintage mouse blanks cut and ready to go. Now I've got our printout that I mentioned earlier. I'll have this available on my website for you guys to use. So please, if you build this bait, tag me in some pictures. That way I can see what you guys end up with. All I'm gonna do now is cut these out. The pattern that I'll have up on the website is going to be the exact same. The layout just might look a little bit different. Right now it's kind of like clustered all together just because I'm still kind of getting it dialed in. Whatever I end up with for sure should be the exact same pieces. It just might be laid out different. So it looks a little bit nicer, that makes better use of the space on the paper. So might look a little different, but it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to get these cut out. The one we are going to start off with is going to be the side profile of the bait. And to help get things lined up, I wanted to show you guys right on top of the dotted line, and that should be exactly 1 inch. So as long as this wood is exactly 1 inch, everything should line up fine, which it looks like it is. So we're golden. So we're gonna start off with a side profile. I'm gonna cut the sides out on all of these, and then we will come back and get them glued on. For glue, we're just using some of that fancy school quality washable glue. Nothing crazy. I'm going to be eventually sanding the whole side of the bait, so I'm gonna layer it on pretty good. That way our pattern doesn't come off. Okay, next, all I'm going to do is throw these in the vise, and then we're going to use a little handsaw, and I'm just going to knock off some of that material right there to save us a little bit of the grit on my belt sander. And there we go. Now I just got to do that to the rest of these, and then we can move over to the belt sander, and I'm going to sand all the way up to the line. Okay, now that everything in the shop has a nice thin layer of dust, it's time to move on to our next step, which I am only going to be using 3 of them right now. We're going to keep the other 3 off to the side because I'm going to show you guys my 3 different ideas for the metal lure lip on these baits. So whichever one you guys like the best, that's what we'll do on the other 3 baits, and we can do some additional painting videos with these guys. In order to get everything to line up and function properly down the road, I need to find the center of the bait. Now these are, as we had measured earlier, exactly 1 inch across. So I'm just going to measure a 1/2 inch across all the way around the bait. And then I'm going to mark a nice line. Now I'm going to keep these other 2 off to the side. I'll just do all the marking on those off camera. That way I don't bore you guys. And as you can see, my toddler was doing some measuring recently. Oh no. I've been working on a lot of projects lately, so my desk is a mess and I can't find anything. I'm looking for my pencil. Do you guys see my... Oh, I see it. And what I like to do for baits like this that have a nice curve to them is I'll just take a piece of thick paper or cardstock material, and then you can line it up on all 3 marks. And then draw a straight line all the way down. Now with the center line of our bait mark, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the last 2 pieces we have on our printout for the pattern. Now on these guys, I'm going to go ahead and cut them all the way up to the line on the mouse. Okay, so for this, you don't have to glue them both down. You can just glue down one or the other. This one is the top with the eyes and the ear placement. And this one is the bottom, and this is something that is going to change depending on the style of lip that you put on there. The center hole there is for some belly weight, and then the small hole up front is for line tie. And those other 2 holes is where we're going to be putting a metal lure lip on later and screwing it in place. And the reason I have the line down the center and crossing the center of the bait is that way everything can be lined up perfectly. So whenever we eventually screw on the lure lip later, it's going to be lined up with the bait. That way the bait will swim straight and not track left or right. So before gluing anything down, I did want to do one more thing really quick. I want to get the center of the bait. I want that line to go across the bottom. So what I like to do, a little mark on this side of the bait, a little mark up top, lining up with it. And then I'll take a little square, do that on both sides here. Now we've got the center line of our bait going all the way around. So what we can do is on the top of the bait, you'll be able to line up the center line with the center line on the wood, and you'll be able to line up this line, the horizontal line, on the wood. So that way everything will be lined up perfectly. Once we sand it, the top and the bottom will all line up. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and glue the top in place. There we go, everything lined up pretty nice. And then for the bottom, all I'm going to do is take a sharp thumbtack, or you could use like a center punch or something like that. And I'm going to line up all points real quick, making sure everything is symmetrical. And then I'm just going to put a little hole right in the center of where the belly weight's going to go. And I'm going to mark where the line tie is going to go. And then on this one specifically, I'm going to go ahead and mark these two spots where the lip is going to screw in later. Now you got little pinpoints to where you can line up to drill the holes and all that. On the top, since eventually this will get sanded off, I'm going to be doing the same thing. Poke a little hole. We will be screwing in an ear later, both sides. And then we will be drilling a little hole for the eyes. Now the side of this bait's going to get rounded off, so be careful whenever you're sanding not to sand away your little holes. You might have to add them back. You might have to poke it again as you're sanding just to make sure you don't lose where these line up. The top's not as important other than for aesthetic reasons and just for things to line up and look nice. The bottom though, where the line tie and your lip go and the belly weight, is important that those are symmetrical and line up to the rest of the bait. So that is all the holes we're going to mark on the first one. These other two, I'm going to mark the top the same because the eyes and the ears will be the same on all of them. So the one thing we are doing different on these is this first one is everything is directly off of the printout that I will have available for you guys. So on the bottom of the bait, our front hole is for the line tie, and then the other two holes will line up with the lure lip. Now the lure lips I've been making out of hand have been kind of crude, I'm not gonna lie. I took a sheet of aluminum that I picked up from Lowe's and I've been cutting them out with the Dremel tool and then sanding them and bending them. They're not the prettiest thing. This is a really rough one that I made where I was trying to get a nice curve in the lip to help move the water around. Now, I don't think that's the best method, but I was trying to make sure I had a solution for you guys to be able to make one at home. So here is this was like the very first one I made before I made the pattern, like a rough version of the aluminum one that we'll be making today to fit this bait specifically. So I will be showing you guys how I do that here in a minute. The other two ideas that I had that we're going to be testing out on these other two baits is, one, I wanted to take a manufactured jitterbug lip that you can get from like Barlow's Tackle or a place like that. I'm going to try putting that on the front of this bait. Now, I don't know if the angle of this is going to be right to get that lip up out of the water enough for it to waddle across the top, or if it's going to work at all. So this one's going to be an experiment and you guys can find out with me. So that is what we'll be doing on that bait. And this final one, because I was trying to source a smaller lip like this to figure out where you could order one. I was having trouble finding any that were small enough, but I think I came up with a solution that should work out perfectly, because a couple things on a bait like this, you don't want the lip to be too heavy because it's going to make it sit weird in the water, or you'll have trouble getting it to walk right. So my idea was to take a spinnerbait blade, and if you drill an extra hole in the top here and then you bend it, well, that to me looks like a really nice metal lure lip that you would see on a vintage style bait. I've got the bigger spinnerbait blade, and I've also got one that's a little bit smaller. I think I'm going to go for the smaller one because that's going to match the style of these older mice a little bit better. So that is going to be the plan for this one. So bait number one, we're going to be matching the printable pattern I have for you guys. Bait number two is going to be a purchased jitterbug lip. And bait number three is going to be a stainless steel bent spinnerbait blade, which I'm honestly thinking that one's going to work the best. but I know this one does work. It just doesn't look as pretty. So for these other two, like I said, we're gonna mark the ears and the eyes the same. And then on the bottom, I'm going to keep it in the same spot, but instead of doing 2 holes for the lip side by side, I'm going to be doing 2 holes for the lip front to back. That way that one can screw into place. And then same thing on this one, I'll be marking 2 holes front to back for that one to screw into place. So I'm gonna get those all marked out, and then we'll keep our other 3 blanks off to the side. That way we can figure out which one of these works the best, and then I will make the other 3 accordingly. Okay, so we've got the jitterbug lip, the do-it-yourself lip, and the spinnerbait lip. So now all I gotta do is head back over to the belt sander. We're going to go ahead and sand the side profile of the bait. I'm gonna bring it all the way up to the pattern on the paper. The side patterns you can either sand off or peel off, because we are done with that. Okay, with the sides of our bait sanded, it is time to move on to the next part, which we're going to be rounding over this edge to make the bait not so square and make it look more like a mouse. Now, normally, whenever I'm building baits, I just kind of I'll hold my pencil on my finger, pick a little bit of a line, how far I'm wanting to sand, and I'll make a line like that. Now, I know that's not the best, here's how to do it. So what I did was add another little section onto the printout for you guys. So we got our side profile, the bottom, and the top that we've already used. These 2 pieces are the exact same shape as the top and bottom. They're just smaller. Now the idea with this, I don't know if it's going to help or make things worse. So you can take the cutout, line it up with everything, making sure it's as centered as possible on the bait, and then you can just kind of pencil in that line. And I'll show you guys here in a second why I do this. So now you should end up with something about like that. Now, as you can see, I didn't sand this bait perfectly. I don't think that matters a whole lot as long as our line ties and everything else is pretty well lined up at the front there. So did the bottom. Now I'm gonna use the side profile piece. So now I can show you guys what the idea of this part is. So from our bottom line here, all of this material, all the way to up here, we're going to be sanding all of that away. So this is a real elaborate way of saying we're going to round over the edge. I just wanted to give you guys an example and a better way of marking out exactly how much I'm sanding over, which isn't a lot, but everything that's penciled or colored right now, we'll be sanding all of that off. So if that makes sense, hopefully that helps and doesn't hurt anybody. The other thing you can do is just take the bait and then draw yourself a line just like that, and that'll get the job done as well. So I'm going to mark that out on all of these baits, and then I'll come back with the Dremel tool and we will get the edges all sanded off. So with all of our lines marked out, I'm going to take my Dremel tool now and I'm just going to sand off the edges. Now, if you don't have a Dremel tool, you can use your belt sander, you can put it in a vise and use a file. Or if you're good at whittling with a carving knife, you can round over the edges that way too. Whatever you got to do. For me, the fastest and most efficient way is using the Dremel tool. Also wanted to let you guys know, if you are thinking about buying a Dremel tool, this is not sponsored in any way. This is just a tool I bought from Harbor Freight. I've gotten this thing a couple years ago and I've been using the crap out of it. It's wireless, it recharges, and it's got plenty of power. So if you're into bait making and you need a Dremel tool, I would recommend checking one of these out. Again, not sponsored. I've never talked to that company or anything. So if you're looking for one, this is the one I use and it's been working like a dream. It's carved a ton of baits. Again, not sponsored unless they see this video and want to help out. Unless they see this video and want to help a brother out. But as of right now, not sponsored. Just a tool I use and would highly recommend if you are in the market for a Dremel tool. So I'm going to take it. I got a fresh sanding disc on there and I'm going to go ahead and sand over the edges. Also, as you're sanding, make sure you don't sand away your holes if you need to. And what I'll do as I'm sanding sometimes is I'll re-poke the hole a little bit deeper if I need to. That way we don't lose where those are supposed to go. Because eventually, right where the ears are and right where the eyes are, the side of that's going to be rounded off. So you want to make sure if you need to re-poke it a little bit as you're going, just so you don't lose where it's at. That's something I'm definitely paying attention to and do while I'm sanding. So something about like that. I think you guys can see that okay. Nothing too crazy. If you did, you could put some little, you can carve out a little bit more right here. Like I'll do this whenever we do the wrap build. You can carve out some more material right there, right where like the legs would be. On this one, we're keeping it simple and trying to keep it looking like the traditional, original vintage mouse baits, but that is something I would do right now if we were doing that. Like I said, I'm going to be doing that on the wrap build video. So this one is pretty well ready for some hand sanding. I'm going to get these other two sanded over, and then I will come back and we'll do some final sanding on this one. All right, with all of the corners rounded over, I'm going to just take some hand sandpaper now. I'm going to go ahead and see how much of the pattern will peel off here. I went pretty heavy on the glue. Okay, so one thing I forgot to do before I started shaping is drill out the hole for the belly weight and drill out the hole for the line tie. Now, the reason I say to do this prior to shaping the bait is some people may need to put it in a vise to help hold the bait still while you're drilling the hole. In that case, you don't, if the vise leaves any marks, you'll be sanding it off anyways. Right now, we're still pretty rough sanding, so you'd be fine to throw it in the vise still. But that is something I meant to do before we started shaping the bait. For drilling out the belly weight, I'm going to be using a 3/8 Forstner bit, and we're going to be drilling the thickness of the blade itself, or the thickness of the bit head itself. So I'm going to be drilling that deep into the bait, if you guys can see that okay. And again, that's a 3/8 inch Forstner bit. Now the purpose of the belly weight is to get the bait to sit correct in the water, and it will also help with the action of the bait. If you move it too far forward, it's going to make the bait want to dive a little bit more. So I've got this one pretty far back, right in front of the center of the bait. And that seemed like that got me the best action out of this size of bait and the type of lip we're putting on there. So I'm going to go ahead and drill out these holes. So there you can see what I was talking about as far as the depth. So got that hole drilled. Gonna move on to the other two. And now we're going to drill out the hole where the line tie is going to screw in. The jitterbug lip one, we do not need to drill out the hole because the lip has a spot where we can put a split ring and tie off right there. I might come back in with the Dremel tool and knock off the ridge on both sides from where we had sanded it earlier. And then I'm going to just come in with some hand sandpaper and sand it smooth, and I'll be working from, let's see, 220 grit up to like 1,000 grit or 800 or whatever it is I have. So I'm going to get to sanding, and then we can come back and move on to the next step. All right, I got them all sanded down nicely. I am going to be doing a little bit more sanding once we seal the wood. But for now, we are ready to drill out the holes for the eyes, and then also we're going to add in the belly weight. For the eyes, I'm going to be using some black beads I picked up off of Amazon. It says they're 4mm black spacer beads. That way they match the traditional baits. Now for drilling out the eyes, I'm just going to be using a normal drill bit and then carefully drilling it in. I actually might start with a little bit smaller drill bit to make a little bit of a pilot hole. I think that should work. I might go just a little bit deeper, but there you go. I'm going to have them protruding from the bait just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get these guys drilled out, and then we can move over and add some weight to the belly. If you don't have a lead pot, no big deal. You can just use some normal like split shot weights. Anything to add some weight into the belly to get it to sit nice and level in the water. Since I'm doing 3 of them, I figured it was worth heating up the lead pot for it. So let's jump over there. We can do that, and then we'll come back and seal the baits. Also, I forgot to weigh these before. The pictures here. 0.553. And after weight is 0.750. We're adding 0.197 worth of weight to it, and that's in ounces. Alright, I'm going to let those guys cool, and we'll go back over to the table. Alright, to fill the bottom here, I'm going to be using just some normal wood filler. Now, I know you can use the baking soda and super glue. I never have the best of luck with that. I always end up making a huge mess. And I've used this wood filler, and it seems like it hardens pretty good. Somebody also recommended on one of my other videos that the microspheres and the UV resin works. I haven't tried that yet. But that's something else you can try if you already have those materials. For these though, I'm just going to be using the wood filler. I'm going to fill it in, and then we can come back and do a nice sanding here in a bit. And there we go. I'm going to let those guys dry and harden, and then do another fine sanding on it. The wood filler is officially dry. It has been a couple days, so all I'm going to do now is knock off the rough edges with some heavier grit sandpaper. And then I bought this pack of sandpaper off of Amazon. It's supposed to have 48 different pieces, and it goes from, I guess, 120 up to over 1,000. So I'm gonna put some elbow grease into these baits, get them sanded up really nicely, and then we can move on to sealing the baits before paint. Alright, got these guys sanded down pretty good. I did do up to 1,000 grit on them. Now what we got to do is seal them. What I normally use on the wood baits is this polyacrylic brush on clear coat. There's only about this much left in the can, and when I used it the other day, it it didn't do good. So for today's video, rather than driving up to the hardware store and buying more, I'm just going to use the Rust-Oleum Matte Clear. Nothing wrong with either one of these. I just think that this soaks into the wood slightly better. What I'm going to do is spray these guys in a nice thin layer in this, and then I will be doing some light sanding in between each layer, because when the wood gets moist, it is going to make some of the grain in the wood rise just a little bit, and so we'll do some fine sanding. I think I'm gonna do 3 layers of this. Or make sure you don't try to seal the wood and paint the same day, because this stuff usually needs a day or 2 to off gas and to be completely dry, because sometimes it does not mix well with the airbrush paint. So I'm gonna get these guys sprayed and on the drying rack. Okay, so as I said at the beginning of the video, everything's frozen currently. I'm going to break this video into 2 parts, which will give these baits time to dry, and I'll be able to do some cool paint jobs on them. So next video that I upload is going to be painting and finishing these baits up, along with testing them. Unless the weather stays crap, then I might throw out another painting video. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Hey. Yeah, let's see how you do under pressure. Oh, yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me, brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah, ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early, feeling rich like I'm Kesha. I get to the paper, boy. Give them a name to remember. Okay. Hey, let's see how you do under pressure.